I'm not really the biggest fan of intros, whether they're my intros or another person's intros. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with introducing yourself, introducing what's happening. I just like to just kind of get into it, and if people want to listen to me afterwards, they can. But I just wanted to give a tiny little intro to this video. I absolutely adore Internet Historian. His work is amazing. He does such a good job on this channel also, and at Incognito is his other channel, which he does. He has other people on the show, and it's kind of like a like he's interviewing them, and it's really funny, and it's about sorry. Oh, it's just that kind of day. So I just want to give out a shout out to him. Not that he needs a shout out from me, because I'm like 9 subscribers, which is awesome, by the way. I love that. But shout out. And now let's get into it, okay? As I like to say, as Monty Python likes to say, let's get on with it. That was really cringe, but I'm keeping it. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
In the state of Kentucky,
I also have no idea
there
what
is
this
a
is
cave
about.
that every now and then demands a sacrifice. January 30th, 1925. A man walks towards the cave with a kerosene lamp in his hand. He hangs up his jacket and ducks into a 5-foot opening. The inside of the cave is narrow. He has to drop down on his hands and knees, crawling through a passageway filled with jagged rocks and choking dust. Then down a chute he had cleared out months earlier. All of the daylight is gone from here, and this lantern is his only source of light. Ignoring the loose limestone rocks perched directly above him, he is now 100
Caving
feet in,
is something that I'm
and
never
here
gonna
he
do.
reaches the turnaround room.
Like bungee jumping or jumping
Now,
out of a
This
plane.
is the turnaround room because this is the juncture where even experienced cavers say, no thanks,
Anyone
and
read
turn around.
Ted the Caver? That creepy
Because to
pasta?
continue on means going
Nightmare
through
fuel.
this, the squeeze.
Oh my
a
god.
gap in the stone of only 9 inches.
Nope.
For reference, here's a subway sub. Going through, he would look exactly like this. His arms will need to be
Oh, is this
completely
Ted the
at their
Caver?
side, and he will need to exhale so that he can reduce
love
the
this
size
story.
of his torso. Gradually, bit by bit, he disappears into the hole.
God.
His clothes are caught on sharp gypsum crystals, hooking into him and threatening to hold him in place. But using his feet like paddles, he pushes through. He reaches a wider opening at the other side, then crawls forward.
He doesn't look
towards
too
the ledge.
happy in that picture. It's
Illuminated
like, I don't know if
here
I'm making
is a
out of it
10-foot
this
drop.
time alive.
A rope is already secured around a boulder, which allows him to rappel down. His worn-out leather shoes touch the ground. This is as far as he can go, and it is time for work to begin. What he is working on is another.
It's interesting to
At
see
the
it
moment,
kind
it's
of
too small for anyone to fit through. But he
video
will chip
format,
away at it
'cause
until
he really
can shove himself right through the other side.
makes it a little bit more
Because on the other side is this.
real.
A magnificent and otherworldly cave structure that will be irresistible to tourists. Every day
I
for
see
months
why,
he has
I
been
think.
removing rocks from this crevice. To him, this is all just routine. So he eases further into the gap. Carefully, he contorts his body through. Rocks
Do you need to
compress
be
the
there
sides
that
of his
bad?
torso, so close that his arms are pinned to the side of his body.
This is so
once
dangerous. What if
again
the whole
paddles his
cave
feet
just
inch
collapses?
Then, about halfway, he stops. The lantern. It's starting to dim.
Oh, fuck.
He will need to go all the way back to
It's
the
like we're
surface to
getting
refuel the
Amnesia, the Dark Descent down
He
here.
sighs. He slowly shuffles back out, pushing the lantern with his shoulder. Then, oh no,
This guy looks so familiar.
dim, crack, darkness.
What YouTuber is he?
He has
right?
knocked over the
Is he
lamp,
YouTuber?
and it has broken.
Fuck. Now you're in
Now, the
literal
man
darkness.
He had been caught in the dark before, and he could make his way back by feel alone. So he continued worming out.
I mean, I
Against
shouldn't
what
laugh
he
at that. It's probably what it
thinks
looked like.
is the cave wall. But that is not the cave wall. That is in fact a rock protruding from the ceiling. As soon as he puts his weight against the rock, it breaks loose. A solid piece weighing 15 kilograms lands directly on his ankle. It aches. But he's okay. It doesn't feel as though his ankle is broken, just badly bruised and caught underneath the rock. So he shuffles to move the rock away. Suddenly, gravel. A lot of gravel. It falls onto his feet, his legs,
your
his
new
torso,
grave.
and the weight of it all forces the wedged rock deeper into the gap underneath his foot. Pinned. He tries to push forward. He cannot. He tries to inch backwards. He cannot. He is stuck.
He screams.
This is Sand Cave.
And nobody
This
hears
man
him.
is Floyd Collins. He is trapped in absolute darkness, 60 feet deep below the
So
earth,
is this Ted the Caver?
all of his limbs held in place at the very bottom of this.
Yeah, you don't have to show me. I recognize how horrific it is.
But before I tell you what happens next, ad time.
Ad time.
Speaking
I
of
love
people
his ads.
Trapped in a cave. World of Tanks. World of Tanks is not only the best game I have ever played, it is the only game I have ever played. It's like cars, but tanks. Picture this. You're a hot new T-34-85M, and you've just joined the battle because some Cromwell B tank bagged your entire family.
Oh,
It's time
no,
for
he
a
did the
bit.
tank
You must
bag.
use strategy. You must use stealth. You must use your wits to defeat your enemies. Use long range or short range.
I played a
It's
game like
available
this as
on
a
console,
kid.
but I want you to get it on
I think it was
PC.
just called Tanks.
Imagine a world war. It's
pretty
with
fun.
Tanks involved this time. Yeah, now you get it. When you've seen as many messed up
Maybe I'll
tanks as
check
I
it
have,
out.
You get a little cynical about the world. My God, I'm gonna be sick. Look at all the different tanks. You can collectomize and customize them all.
The baby and tank.
Constant 18 kill and ruin other people's good time.
What the f***? I'm on your f***!
Did I
This
mention
actually
it's
looks pretty fucking
historically
fun, to be
accurate?
honest.
Especially the Japanese robot tanks.
Hell yeah,
Ooh,
dude.
The tanks are kissing. Progressive.
I could have a little
Use the
romance
invite code TankMania and get the
If I could have
Excelsior
romance
250k
between the
credits.
tanks.
Other stuff.
Sold.
Go to the link in the description and use the invite code TankMania. Here's what you do. Get World of Tanks. Put that on one screen. Then, on a second monitor, you'll watch the next hour of this video while you play the game.
Oh, well, I'll play
I'm
later.
contractually
I'd like to have my
obliged
full
say
attention
thank
on
you
whatever the fuck's
for
happening in the
being a
tank. In the
friend. Such no.
Freudian slip.
Tank's empty, kid. Go on without me.
No, in the cave.
Use your repair consumable.
Let's watch the cave.
It's too late, kid. Tank care of my family for me. No.
There's a little kid in a tank.
Get it. Add o. Collins is still in the dark, unable to move. His left arm was pinned underneath
I
his
feel really
torso.
stupid because I don't
His
know who
right
that is.
wedged
He
by
looks
the rock
really
ceiling
familiar to
above.
me.
Beneath him, sharp crystal shards dug into his
I think this
skin.
is
Ice
Ted the
thawed,
Caver, though.
traced
I think this
across
is what
the ceiling
happens
and
at the
dripped
end,
down
if I
directly onto his
remember
face,
correctly.
cooling underneath him. The water was a consistent
I always thought it was
54
just a
degrees.
creepypasta.
Floyd tried to breathe calmly in the concentrated dark. When he did attempt to shuffle, more gravel and rocks would tumble from
Don't
above
move.
and pile
This is
onto
when
his
you need
feet,
help.
So nothing would work. He clawed
But
at
nobody's
the cave
there.
walls.
Oh my
His fingertips were
god.
bloody, and he realized
is
that there was
horrific.
only one option left. Call out for help.
I told my dad about
Wait,
this video, and I'm like,
Who
I can't
is
wait for you to
Floyd?
see it.
And why did he even go into a dangerous cave?
I'm sorry, Dad.
Floyd has been exploring the caves of Kentucky
I'm
since
really
he was
sorry.
nearly 6 years old. And as he grew up, he gained a reputation for being a very daring caver. He would dive into some hole on one side
Why
of
is he
town
walking like that?
and emerge miles away on someone else's property.
Sup?
He grew up and he became embroiled in the Kentucky Cave Wars. Now, there's way too much to go into here.
No, this
but
cannot be Ted
summary
the Caver.
version is, there's this huge network of interconnected caves called Mammoth Caves. It's actually the largest cave system in the world. And there's a city right in the middle of it. Cave City. Real name. So, of course, there
Excellent
are dozens
name.
of cave entrances on private property all over the place. Now, farmland in this region has very poor soil, and things do not grow well here. So, cave tourism as a source of income quickly became the prominent thing. However, a problem. There are a very large number of caves, but there are only a limited number of tourists. So
Oh,
competition
no.
rapidly escalated. Visit my
Competition?
cave.
I was thinking
Visit my cave.
There's less people
Big
come
sign
save
for
your
it saying,
ass.
tourists, come to me. Mine is definitely open. Mine is the best. But then competitors would respond by saying, hey, by the way, we're open, but don't go to that one over there. It's really shitty. In fact, it's dangerous. This kept going further. By the end, they were blocking off the trail to each other's property, beating each other
really
in the
rude.
street, and hiring people called cappers who would dress up as policemen and tell tourists, no,
That's
no, you can't go
illegal.
in there. That one? No, it's illegal. Despite the fierce competition, Floyd found a cave on his property and he started advertising it to tourists. Of course, very few came. All right, he thought, what if I found something really special and unique? Then surely people would have to come to my cave to see it. So he kept exploring and exploring until he found this hollow. It was filled with big gypsum crystals, and when you were in there, it felt like a completely
It's beautiful,
alien
yes.
world.
But do I
it was
need to risk my
barely
life to
accessible.
get to it?
This small tunnel is the only way
No.
in. He would
Don't
need to
you-
dig for
don't you
months to
either.
open it up to tourists, but he knew he could do it. Back to the competition. They knew the value of this cave. They knew the potential. They wanted it for themselves, and they wanted Collins gone. One time,
Oh, fuck.
5 of them just wandered onto Floyd's property and demanded he hand over the lease. When he refused, they just started beating the shit out of him. This only stopped when Floyd's brother, Homer, marched out with a shotgun and chased them all off.
Good, damn.
But
Get the
Floyd
fuck
was
out of
not
my
deterred.
property.
He spent 12 hours a day, every day, for months, clearing gravel and stone, chipping away at that passage. He would open it up to tourists, make his cave an incredible attraction, and make his dreams come true.
God bless him.
Is anyone there?
So there's Floyd in the dark,
But-
yelling out for help.
It was not to
He's
be.
at the start of a very tiring loop.
Hour 0, fuck.
Wake, yell. Sleep, wake, yell. Hours passed. His voice gave in. Arms tingled numb. Pain radiating up his ankle. Here he remained in the dark for the next 23 hours. Quickly you might wonder, how come no one's come for him after 23 hours?
After that many hours,
Well,
no drink,
Sam
no
Cave
food,
resides
you're
on a
gonna really start to
200-acre
feel it.
farm. There are several
You can
homes on his
survive
property with
longer,
other
but
families.
it's not gonna feel
One of them,
good.
of course, is Collins' house, where Floyd's father, Lee, resides. Now, Lee and Floyd constantly get into fights about how to run things. Lee wants his son to concentrate on farming, and Floyd wants to concentrate on cave tourism. Arguments would often get heated. And Lee was also a bit of a drunk. It was doubtful that he would even notice if his son Floyd was missing. Also not helping things, Floyd regularly lodged at 2 other homes on the farm. So when he didn't return to one host, they would presume that he was staying with the other. And, even
I
worse
can't.
than that, he had
I
recently
can't.
spent 30 hours
This
in
is so frustrating.
so disappearing for this length of time wasn't seen as abnormal. Regardless, around the 23-hour mark, a few locals started to suspect that, hey, something might be wrong, and they went to check up on him. And here,
Don't go in there.
they spotted his jacket still hung up.
Good.
Unusual.
They
went
figured
deep.
it out, hopefully.
However, there was only one person small enough to make it as far as the turnaround room. This was
This is
a
why you tell people where you're
17-year-old
going.
Jewel Estes. He refused to go into the squeeze, but it was
Like,
close
for
enough
example,
to call Collins' name.
the 127-hour guy? No one knew
And
where
Collins
he was.
yelled back.
I'm surprised that
Istus emerges from the cave.
he could hear them from all the way down
we know
there.
he's trapped, and we know where he is.
So, locals started to gather outside. Out of my way, say a bunch of men who would each show up and take turns heading into the cave in an attempt to reach Collins. But once they reached the turnaround room,
Nope. Nope. Nope.
they would fail to reach him, emerging from the cave, soaked in mud and cursing. Out of my way, they would say as they were heading in the reverse direction.
Yeah, send
So
in
a few
someone
more hours
smaller.
passed. Word would spread around town. Dozens of locals from Cave City started to gather outside.
I would feel creeped out, like, especially as the father or the brother.
Over
Like,
in
if you're not going to
Louisville,
help,
Floyd's
leave.
22-year-old brother, Homer, he gets a phone
This is not a circus.
Hello? I see. My brother. He's trapped in a cave? I'm on my way.
Homer jumps on a coach and makes his way to Floyd's cave. Homer struts up to the scene. Dozens of men are standing around outside. He ignores them all and marches right into the cavern, still wearing his city clothes. He makes his way in. Down
You should
the
tell
chute,
people that you're
through the
going
narrowing
in.
passages,
You should
down on his hands and
communicate.
knees towards the turnaround room. And when he arrives, he does not hesitate. He squeezes into the
That
hole,
is a brother for
scrambles
you.
his way through to the ledge on the
I
other
would do
side.
this
He
for my
sees
brother.
Floyd below and slides down to meet him.
For sure.
Floyd.
What's up?
Right, probably
I'd
wasn't
probably
that casual.
Oh,
fail
thank God you're here.
because I'm
Homer
not
took a
tiny
moment
enough.
to shine his light
But
around
I
the
would,
area
Andrew.
and assess the situation. It was not good. This rock formation is
No,
going
it's
to
probably
prove
crunching
almost
him,
impossible
crushing him
to
at this
work around.
point.
All right, so let's have a look. Floyd is here. The rock
Oh,
is
okay.
here, pinning his ankle. He's surrounded by rubble, and there's a pocket of gravel above him, ready to fall. However, because this opening is so small, there are only two viable ways of reaching Floyd and that gravel. Option 1, the most obvious, feet first. But if you do this, you have to kind of squat, and your own torso obstructs
His
access
arms
to
aren't
the
able
rubble.
to go up like that?
Otherwise, option 2, come down head first.
No.
That will give you better
No, no,
access,
no, 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 no,
but
no,
you're
no.
trying to move hundreds of pounds of gravel upside down. Worse yet, there's barely an inch around Collins on either side, so good luck getting your arm down near
I'm
Floyd's
fucking
ankle
shaking.
to actually free him from
This
the
is
wedged
so
rock.
scary.
Homer calls back to the less daring rescuers standing behind him.
Quickly, some food and drink.
They send it through. He hand feeds his brother a pint
Good
of
idea.
coffee and a total of 9 sausage sandwiches.
Feeling better?
Much better.
Then, Homer went to task. He began removing rocks and gravel, tiny scoop at a time, with the help of an old syrup can.
Is that it? That's so cool! I'm a total history buff. Please.
For
Recommend
the
me
next 8
history,
hours, he toiled,
like,
first with hands,
anything.
then once enough
Educational
was cleared,
history, and I
using a
will
crowbar
watch it.
to scoop behind his brother, scraping away sharp protrusions as he went. It was slow progress. Virtually futile. As soon as he removed one rock or scoop of gravel, another would tumble from above and land in the new absence. And it was exhausting work. By sunrise, Homer's arms and back were numb.
Who are these
His lungs
YouTubers?
burned. He was losing hope.
I've seen this
Homer
guy.
emerged
I've
hours
seen that
later,
guy. Who are they?
shivering violently, skin bruised from his fingertips, but the cave barely yielded at all. However, something new. By the time Homer reached outside, he was greeted by a sea of approximately 100 men and women standing around, drinking, squabbling, and talking big game about how they too were going to save Floyd. The press was
Be
also
my
present
guest.
to help people gawk from afar. Now, Homer recuperated at a small tent near the cave's mouth. Strangers immediately crowded around him to ask innocent but, frankly, frustrating questions, and offer unsolicited, obvious advice, as well as wildly impractical solutions.
While he's having
"We
like
should
a
try untying his
crisis.
shoes," said one. No, we should send him down with a contortionist who's got a mallet and a chisel," Ah, we should jerk him off, right, guys? All right, I made that third guy up. You get the idea. And they started to argue with
He's gonna die anyways.
plans.
Want to give him a good time
Hey,
before that.
How about using dynamite? One clique formed, insisting that it was a great idea. And another saying, no,
Are you
the
fucking
explosion will
kidding
kill him,
me?
And the weight of the new rocks will surely crush
You
him.
barely want to move
They fought
him
for a while until they started arguing.
You don't wanna move
about
him fast.
those torches,
simply
which will
because
cook
of
him or asphyxiate
the
him, or
cave could
gas will
collapse.
poison him. But by far the most common suggestion, of course, was amputation. Never mind that the foot itself was unreachable, and never mind what the blood loss and shock
Unfortunately,
would do to Floyd's
that
weakened
is-
body,
that happens.
and never minding even more that Floyd was strongly reluctant to the idea.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't cut my foot off.
All of the squabble would not have gotten on Homer's nerves, except that not one of them would just brave the damn cave and continue shoveling away the gravel. The formula was always the same. Brave heroes go in with food and supplies, then reach the turnaround room and immediately lose their nerve, then dump the food just outside the hole, and then return
Thanks.
back outside and
Thanks.
no, he says thanks for the food. Thank you so much. Yum yum. No one would go through that squeeze. Dozens more men would try. All of them would fail. February 2nd, 9 a.m. So far, Homer has been the only person to have reached Floyd, and that would continue
Because that's
to be
his
true
brother.
until here we are at
If
the
it was my
Louisville
brother,
Courier.
I'd be down
There's
there.
a spirited young newshawk
Immediately.
named William Miller. He's talking to his boss, and he's trying to convince him that it's a great idea for him to cover the story of the man trapped in the cave.
Listen up, boss. I'm hearing talk of a man in a cave. He's stuck down there, and I want to get down there too. Get to the nitty-gritty, you hear?
This is an opportunity for some good PR, Miller. I'm in, but I want us to sponsor that rescue. Picture this. Man saved from cave by Louisville Courier, the finest newspaper in the state. That'll drum up plenty of business.
24-carat
Yes, a
idea,
newspaper
boss. I'll make it
saved
happen.
this
I'll get down
man.
there toot sweet.
So off Miller goes to Floyd's cave. Back over at the cave, Homer is sitting outside trying to recuperate. As Miller wanders
Are they going to put in more and
he
more
glares at the man
YouTubers?
in
Please
his
do.
city clothes
Please do.
and answers every question with either a grunt or a one-word
I
answer.
recognize them all. I
Yeah.
just don't know who they are.
Sure.
Finally, he gestures to
Yeah.
Sand Cave.
Listen, you want more information? The hole's right behind me. Why don't you go take a look yourself?
Now, Miller is only 21, but he is a slender and determined man. He takes on the challenge.
Sorry about my text.
So he removes his
I'm all nervous.
drapes himself in coveralls, and grabs a lamp. Miller slowly enters the cave. He finds himself stepping in puddles and having to correct his balance against the ever-softening walls. These were accumulating problems thanks to the gawkers outside who had lit campfires all around the entrance. That caused snowmelt, and the stable environment of the cave is starting to shift. But Miller makes it further than most.
Good.
And all that's left is that final squeeze, and he's there. He stops. He takes a moment and decides to call out to Floyd.
Floyd!
Hearing there is someone on the other side, he feels ashamed
What's
not to try.
up?
So he closes his eyes and moves forward. His slender figure begins inching through. The crystal gypsum cuts into his elbows and tugs at his clothes. He gets snagged. He's spluttering through the pools of muddy water. He stops, collects himself.
Yeah, that's what you have to
pushes
do.
on.
Take a
He
deep
can
breath and
barely
keep going.
Inhale. If he gets stuck in here, he can only hope that someone else can come in from behind and pull him out by the legs. But eventually, he makes it through.
Good.
Fantastic. He's now standing on the edge of a 10-foot pit, and he clumsily bumbles his way down. He sat right next to Floyd, ready to interview him. But Floyd didn't really answer any of his questions. In fact,
Are you
he
fucking
was
kidding me?
incoherent. At the moment, he is sitting in a pool of water that is 12 degrees, slowly sapping his body temperature. He is dying from exposure. The cold is
He's gotta
diminishing
get that
Floyd's
interview.
mental faculties, and he can barely make sentences. So Miller took a few mental notes, and he left. He worked his way back through the squeeze,
Not gonna try to help
past
at
the
all,
turnaround
or-
room, and out into the daylight. He is covered in mud and scratches and numb head to toe.
Your brother's
And when
literally
Homer saw
freezing to death in there,
his hope
guys.
reignited. Someone else had made it to Floyd.
You and me. Together, we can get Floyd out of there.
And get a crazy ass
If Miller
interview
hadn't gone to that cave,
while we're doing it.
there's a good chance that Floyd's story would have remained an obscure footnote in the back pages. But the interviews and first-person accounts gave the audience a glimpse of something real. Fear, hope, desperation, the full range. And so from Los Angeles to New York, Floyd's story was picked up everywhere and described the Kentucky man's plight in sensational detail.
How much longer is this video?
Radio became a regular feature for
Is this?
regular Americans.
We're having a happy
Radio
ending.
allowed something new.
What?
Hourly updates, letting people get engrossed
This is
into the
crazy.
story. So, mostly thanks to
crazy.
Miller, the story of Floyd
I
over
love
the next
this.
week would grow and grow, seemingly frothing over into every aspect of American life. The press at large would be clamoring over each other for every little extra scrap of detail they could get about Floyd.
Extra,
And
idiots
everybody
stuck
wanted to
in
know,
cave.
will this man make it?
That's mean of me.
Back outside the cave,
But
someone
true, a
new
little bit,
enters the
unfortunately.
scene. Lieutenant Robert Burden, a thin but strong 33-year-old Louisville firefighter. Like Miller, he was able to navigate the passages of the cave and brave the squeeze. Scratched up pretty good and drenched in cold, muddy water, he managed to get through. He grabbed the rope and confidently lowered himself to Floyd's position. It was not an optimistic sight.
Floyd just
Floyd's
looks
condition
over
was
it right now.
deteriorating.
He's over it.
I've got a heck of a problem here, but I think I can get you out with a rope.
Floyd nods in approval.
Go on.
We might
Just
pull your
fucking
bloody
do
leg
it or
off.
let me die.
Just pull my leg off then. Get me out of here.
Burden returned to the surface and faced the crowd. He announced.
You should put
We
him
will
out though.
attempt a rope pull.
The crowd murmured. It was dangerous.
It is
It would
dangerous.
certainly break his foot and could.
It could break a lot of
altogether pull
things
it off.
because everything's
If there
gonna
were
be
rocks, you'll fill up the poor man.
crumbling down
Amongst
and
the crowd,
break
the doctor
his
stepped forward.
ribs,
A rope pull could
crush
stretch
his
internal
insides.
organs and cause them to rupture.
Yeah.
It would kill him. But Floyd is dying of
And you don't
exposure.
want to move all the
situation
rocks
is becoming
too
desperate.
much.
Burden put caution to the side.
The time for
Then
strategy
everybody
is
could get
over.
stuck.
Now we try brute force.
Okay, let's do it. Wait, they're dragging him out from his leg? This must be passed out or something.
Floyd! Floyd! We're here. We're gonna get you out of here.
After 79 hours in the cold water, he is delirious, fading in and out of consciousness. Homer gave his brother some coffee and fed him a couple of ham sandwiches. That warms him up and gives him a bit more energy, and he comes back to lucidity.
Good.
Oh, much better.
I'm gonna put the special harness around you. Burden and Miller, they're here too. We got 3 more boys right up the cave, and they're all ready to pull as hard as they can to get you out of here.
Floyd was frightened.
I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna hurt.
He gave his brother some whiskey and a strong sedative to calm his
Yeah.
nerves, and also to help him withstand the shock in case his foot is destroyed. Floyd took the opportunity to appreciate being surrounded by friends and family.
Go on. Do it.
All right, strap him up.
Homer tied the harness around Colin's chest and knotted the rope.
Ready?
Above, Miller is crouched at the top of the pit.
Ready?
Burden clenches the cord from further up the cave.
3,
The rope goes taut.
2,
Do it.
1.
Oh!
Instinctively, Floyd gasps. The force of 6 men pulled against the clutches of the cave. Floyd began to scream. His body was being pulled up from the rubble. The gravel was beginning to shift.
Oh.
Burden clenched his teeth.
Oh, harder!
Floyd screamed harder as well. Now, Floyd was trapped in a supine position, but the direction of the rope caused an upwards force that wrenched him vertically. His torso was being compressed and bent against
No!
the ceiling of the train. It would kill. Floyd's screaming intensified, and through gasps was begging them to stop. The screams filled the echoing cave, but it did not stop.
Stop.
The agony continued. On and on.
Because the thing is, like, if you
No
stop
progress.
now, they made
Enough.
some
You guys are
progress,
killing
right?
him.
Just
Homer pulled in the
said
opposite
You gotta
direction
reassess,
to give his brother some
reassess.
reprieve. Somehow, Homer mustered the strength to altogether wrench the cord from the other men's hands. The rope went slack. Homer, Floyd, and the rope lay limp on the cave floor, panting and exhausted. No progress had been made. The cave would not let this man go. The futility of the situation sank in, and all they could do was leave for now and reassess. Everybody
Yeah.
was shaken by the experience. Burden fainted as he crawled towards the exit. Most of the other men had to be carried away. Outside, the crowd had grown to 200. They buzzed and asked useless questions, and Homer walked dejectedly past them. He sat by thinking what he could
Sorry.
do.
I need some
The
sugar.
cause seemed hopeless.
Homer?
Then, someone showed up who could turn things around. He looked up to see a childhood friend of both his and Floyd's, Johnny Gerald. Gerald knew more about cave rescues than most. In fact, just that summer prior, he had helped untangle Floyd from a different snag. He was just the man.
He knows
for the job.
it's Floyd's a problem.
All right.
He likes to get stuck.
Well, look who it is.
Floyd perked up,
It's his homie.
thrilled to see Gerald.
You saved me
Let's
once.
see what we can do.
Gerald jumped down. For the next 3 hours, Gerald went back to the original plan of prying away rocks. His stamina was good, and progress was surprisingly good as well. For several more hours, he continued, just moving stone after stone. New one would fall in its place, and he'd move that one too. By midnight, he had enough room to shift position and clear some of the gravel that was at each side of Floyd's body. Gerald would spend several more hours scooping. And it worked. For the first time, Floyd's torso was now available. Then his hips, his upper thigh. For the first time in over 90 hours, Floyd was able to wiggle his arms, his hips, and even that trapped right leg. Though it was
Does
very
he
painful
have
to do.
feeling in that
one
right
session,
leg, though?
Gerald managed
That's
to
what I
move
want to
a
know.
half-ton of rock, but there was still a lot more to go. And that rock by his foot was still holding him in place. By 2 a.m., Gerald was spent. He needed rest, and he was ready to
Say
head
as
back
if I have any
outside.
ideas.
Floyd, tomorrow you're gonna be a free man.
Now here you might think that things will become straightforward. They did not. Now that that space had been cleared, Burden became convinced that if he could get down that passage again, he could free Floyd with another rope pull, fate deciding with both feet or just one. But when Burden tried to enter the cave again, he was sternly rebuffed by the locals. They were playing gatekeeper. They
Why?
had been specifically instructed to not let anyone in.
Why?
And they were especially opposed to Burden making another rope pull after word spread about the disaster of the first attempt. He tried to reason with them.
Let me try the rope pull again. It'll work this time.
They wouldn't let up.
Oh, yeah, it's the rope pull.
Instead,
No,
they
we're not
shouted
doing that again.
obscenities and shoved him in the other direction.
Yeah, goodbye.
Meanwhile, Gerald and Homer are incapacitated with exhaustion, and Miller was busy filing some paperwork for the Louisville Courier. Nobody else had the ability or the authority to take action, so Floyd spent all of that morning alone.
Hello? Is anyone there? Help?
Somebody needs to go talk to this guy.
Anyone out there?
Word spread about Floyd. Miller's reporting had been picked up by the AP Newswire, and they distributed it amongst their hundreds of partnered newspapers. For Miller, it would be the biggest moment of his career. But he didn't stop to pay it mind. He spent the day hatching a rescue plan. Miller descended into the cave and set to work. When he entered, he found that the team before him had strung light bulbs all through the cavern, leading all the way down to Floyd. Very handy. A bulb was also put around Floyd's neck to keep him warm and make sure that he was never again left in the dark. Miller popped down to Floyd.
Ah, Floyd, fancy seeing you here, buddy.
Reusing that syrup tin, he started offloading gravel into buckets. Those buckets were then passed up
With friends like
and down
these,
the
you know.
chasm. And so it went on for the next 2 hours. Miller stopped for a break. He took some bread, milk, and whiskey, and sharing it with Floyd, they started to get...
Whoever's giving him whiskey is the real
Floyd had
MVP,
been in
dude.
that cave for over 100 hours. And seeing everyone working together, Floyd was overcome with a sense of hope and relief. And so he began spilling his heart out to Miller. Here is what he is quoted in the newspaper.
I believed I would go to heaven. I can feel that I'm to be taken out alive and with both my feet. I kept thinking, what would happen if the rock above me would fall? It caused me to shudder. I kept thinking to drive my mind to something else, but it wasn't much use.
If it fell,
I
though,
couldn't do much to
that's
help
it.
those who came to help me. But
There's
I
no
knew that a lot
surviving
of
that. That's
people
probably a
were
quick
willing to do
death.
all in their power.
Probably the best
Gave me
kind of
courage.
death in this situation.
Tuesday morning, I thought to myself, 4 days down here, and no nearer freedom
Fortunately,
than I was on the
as
first
scary
day.
as it is.
How will it end? Will I get out? I couldn't think of it. I have faced death before. It doesn't frighten me, but it is so long. Tell them I am not going to give up. Tell them I'm going to fight and be patient and never forget them.
Beautiful.
Meanwhile,
Absolutely
Floyd's
beautiful.
story kept growing. Pedestrians would gather around corner store windows to read the latest bulletins. The press began using giant typefaces, commonly only reserved for declarations of war. Churches in all of the nearby counties were
Didn't know
holding
that.
services for
Didn't know
Floyd.
it was only
Theaters
used for
even
that
interrupted their
for a
shows
while.
to update the audience. Now, at the time, President Coolidge was in charge, and his Secretary of Commerce was a geologist, Herbert Hoover.
What?
Now, Mr.
Ah,
Hoover
it is
followed the
Hoover
story
Hoover.
very closely, and so it was likely that the president did too. Even Congress paused session to ask about the latest news from San
I wonder, can Hoover
By
do
the end,
something?
The Floyd Collins incident would explode into the third largest non-political story between World War I and World War II.
My dad is going to be
All of this
fascinated
excitement
by
brought an
this.
inundation of people to Cave City. Old population, 690. Yawn. New population, 10,000. Hotels ran out of food. Residents turned their homes into makeshift hotels, charging sizable premiums to let people nap in their bathtubs. The banks quickly ran out of on-hand cash, and 4,500 automobiles impatiently sat backed up for 2 miles from 20 different states to drive onto the
They could be
Collins
any
farm
color,
and turn
as
their
long as
pristine
it's
green
black.
pastures into swampy parking lots. Deep below all those tourists, there's Miller, trying to free Floyd. Alright, a little bit of setup. Floyd, Miller, some remaining rubble, rock. For anyone to lift the rock by hand would be impossible because Floyd's body obstructs the hole. Miller grabs a crowbar and shoves it through the gap. Now he's going to lever it off Floyd's foot.
Okay.
The crowbar is now wedged against the rock. Next, he takes a jack. He positions it on top of the crowbar so that it will be forced against the ceiling. However, problem. That jack is too big. It doesn't fit. Miller yells up the tunnel for a smaller one, but this took some time.
Right.
And when it arrived, too small, won't reach the ceiling. But instead of sending for another one, Miller takes 2 blocks of wood and bolsters them underneath the crowbar.
Look how awkward that
Crowbar
is.
now
Your
sits
stomach is
higher,
just on
it
his face.
fulcrums against the blocks, and the jack is sitting on top. All Miller has to do is expand the jack, which he will do using this spanner, holding it at the very tips of his fingers. Sounds easy. It's not. But that's the plan. Let's get him out of there. He turned the wrench. The jack expanded, and the crowbar took strain. The whole thing slid apart with a pang. Floyd wasn't hurt, but Miller was contorting and exerting his whole body from back to fingertip. They tried again. Same result. Miller tried a new angle. Maybe this time. The jack pressed. The tension increased.
Oh, he's going to be in
And
so
this
much
time,
pain, or
the
he's not
rock
going to have any feeling at
moved.
all.
It fucking moved. With each turn, the stone shifted a little more. Miller's hands shook with adrenaline.
scared.
His face and body dripping with sweat.
I'm scared. Someone hold me.
One of the blocks slipped, and the wooden tower went sideways. The rock painfully slammed back down on Colin's foot.
Ah, you'll get it next time, Miller. Try again.
Miller did. Again. And again. Adding blocks, taking them away, new crowbar position, changed the jack position, every angle, all while Floyd was there, cheering him on.
Yay.
For the next 4 hours he tried. No progress.
Really?
Miller was exhausted. He couldn't do this on his own, but he was the only one slim enough to get in through the gap. The group decided to concede for now and return to the surface. They would take just a small break, but it looked to everyone like there was a clear way to get this man out. So Miller and Burden crawled
Clear
out
way?
through the mud and the wines
What?
of the cave. As they made their way through, the cave was visibly sagging. The ceiling seemed lower. Parts were harder to navigate than
Fuck.
before.
It's not safe.
Especially now with their
At what
bruised
point
and
does it
purple
become
hands. But
a lost
they made
cause?
it outside to
You
the
know,
fresh,
we're
early
saving
morning
one
air.
person, perhaps,
where they're
but we
greeted
may
with
be
a new
killing a
sight.
lot of other people.
Dozens of soldiers.
Are you kidding me?
The
Guys,
National
you get
Guard
in there.
had arrived.
This is your job to
In
protect
addition
people.
to the National Guard, a new figure was joining the story, Henry Carmichael. Now, Carmichael was the general superintendent of the Kentucky Rock Asphalt Company. He had been on site since Tuesday, and he was appalled
So
at
is
how
he
primitive the rescue
a
attempts
rock,
had been.
like,
Shortly after Miller and Co. had exited,
genius?
Carmichael
Connoisseur
sent 2 men
or
into
something?
Sand Cave to assess the structure's
I want
stability.
Herbert Hoover to come down
They soon
here and
came
help
back
his
with a
ass.
report. It was not good. Near the final squeeze, large cracks had formed. The ceiling
fuck.
was beginning to droop.
Dude, this is so bad.
So the following is a recounting of events from one of Carmichael's men, Casey Jones. Casey and another worker spent about an hour in the cave, surveying its condition, looking at the boards, the ceiling, the stability of the walls.
I
He
wouldn't hit it
continued
with a
deeper
fucking
towards
hammer.
Floyd. He was fighting against his nerves. The shifting of the rock pinged his every instinct to flee. But he heard Collins moaning ahead, so he pushed himself on. He managed to make it through the squeeze and he arrived at the 10-foot pit. Seeing Floyd trapped, he tried to ignore the pebbles that were tumbling behind him.
Please, come down.
I can't right now, Floyd, but I will when I get back.
Behind Casey, his partner is
There
begging
may
to
not
leave.
be a
Below
fucking-
Casey, Collins is pleading for help.
Please.
Please.
I'm thirsty.
Okay.
Casey slid headfirst into the pit and hastily ladled Floyd some coffee. But Floyd rejected it. Rumbling intensified from above.
No,
And
give
in
me that
moment,
fucking whiskey.
Casey realized that this was not a plea for sustenance. Floyd knew that a cave-in was inevitable. Scared and approaching his 5th day trapped, he was completely at his wit's end.
He's like, you need to save
He
me
knew He
now.
was about to be trapped in that cave,
Yeah.
and he didn't want to be trapped alone.
For God's sake, Casey, come on, you'll get us killed.
Stay with me, please. Don't leave.
Casey looked into Colin's eyes, set the coffee down, and pulled himself out of the pit. He wiggled underneath the sagging ceiling and crawled towards the turnaround room as fast as his limbs could scramble against the cave walls. He looked back to see the passage closing like a maw. Reflections from the bulb shining around Floyd's neck were no longer visible. Instead, just sobs could be heard, muffled from behind the rocks.
Do we know how long he lived past that? Or if he was immediately
Miller and
suffocated?
Burton awoke in the late morning, confident that today would be the day that they saved Floyd. They had some new equipment too,
Are we sure
wire to
Floyd
wrap
is
around the
still
wooden blocks to
alive at
prevent them
this
from slipping.
point?
And they changed their mind about that acetylene torch. They'll use it to burn away 2 rocks that had previously blocked their way. But when Miller got to the turnaround room,
Was that
all of that optimism
fucking
left him.
Cillian,
The
whatever the
entrance to
fuck
the
his name is
squeeze
from
was
Peaky
now
Blinders,
just a pile
in his
of
Peaky
debris.
Blinders outfit?
Miller froze, staring
Cillian
at it
Murphy.
for a long while. Then he sighed and did the only thing he could think, attempt to move some of the stones.
I'll have to look
But each
again.
adjustment led to more rocks just tumbling down and landing in that space. He persisted until crash. A large chunk of clay landed onto his feet. Recognizing the danger, Miller returned to the surface. 15 minutes later, he emerged from the cave with a bloodied-up nose and bruises down his back and shoulders.
Yeah, that's
Miller
him.
caught sight and races over to him. Miller just says, "For God's sake, just don't let Homer or anyone
Maybe there's
else
more
back
of them.
in there."
Yeah.
Now, he didn't actually need to worry about Homer going back in there because he was sidelined
There's
with
3 of them.
illness. But he did, however, need to worry about Gerald because he was furious. Gerald had warned everyone that putting dozens of people in Sand Cave would cause a collapse. It certainly did. The rest of that day would be wasted, as men threw blame around and screamed at each other.
Cillian
about how
Murphy,
to
shut
handle
up.
the cave-in. And Floyd spent the rest of that day alone. The surveyors continued checking the cave throughout the day. By the evening, Carmichael had ordered everyone to an assembly. Gerald took the floor. He was going to try one last daring rescue. He boldly announced his plan and an ultimatum.
Listen up. There's death down there. The walls and ceilings are crumbling. Unless you're determined to take the biggest chance you ever took in your life, tell me now and stay outside.
Next, they told all the Gorkas to get the fuck out of the cave, clear off. And over the next 8 hours, Gerald
The little
would
boy.
enter and leave Sand Cave at least 5 times, chipping away at that pile of debris. In the woods, men sawed trees and chopped logs to shore up the cave walls. Underground, the crew reinforced cracks and wobbling boulders with fresh strips of wood. Gerald assessed that about 4 barrels of rocks would need to be moved, and piece by piece, they made that happen. Steadily.
This
they
is
managed to
incredible.
move enough rock
If they're able to
allow
pull this
Gerald
off,
to get within earshot of Floyd.
probably one of the greatest times in history, man. These
Bad
people
news. We can't reach you, but hold on.
all
We're
grouping
coming.
together to save this one
Stone by
guy, you
stone,
know?
They continued.
It's incredible.
After a few hours, the light of the
It's
bulb
beautiful.
around Floyd's neck was peeking through. A couple more hours,
Is-
enough room
is
for
he
Gerald
alive?
to squeeze through.
Is he alive?
Okay, that's enough. Floyd, I'm going for now. But when I get back, I'm gonna get you out of there.
Is he alive?
Exhausted but still determined, Gerald crawled back up the cave and marched to the men huddling outside.
Gather the equipment, and in an hour's time, it's gonna be me and Floyd coming out of that cave.
Nope.
Gerald entered Sand Cave for his final time. The walls had been reinforced, but mud and water was accumulating everywhere.
Yes.
He waded through it
yes.
and pressed on past the danger of the sagging ceiling. With determination on his face and a grease gun clutched in his right hand, he scrambled towards Floyd.
This
But
needs to be
before
a
the final
movie.
squeeze,
This needs
he
to be a
stopped.
movie. If this is
It
a
was
movie,
all
tell me.
gone. The cave ceiling had crumbled once again. Gerald stared motionlessly at the pile. Then he began to yell.
Floyd!
A rock disconnected from the ceiling and tumbled onto Gerald's head. Luckily, just a small one. He rubbed his scalp and called out again.
Floyd!
This time, a moan. It rumbled from the other side. Fearing that his friend was slipping
He's
out of consciousness,
alive,
Gerald willed
but not
himself
for
against the cave,
long. Oh
launching
my
the debris
god,
behind him
yes,
with
this would
force.
be me. Just
He ignored the pain from being struck on the head and clawed at the stone pile.
God.
He carried on this way for several minutes until a sharp, heavy rock dropped from the ceiling and landed squarely on his back. No more than 15 minutes later, Gerald returned to the surface. Defeated. Only after the cave-ins did they start to think about all of the things that they could have done.
Wait, why didn't we rig a portable telephone line? That would have been incredibly simple here in 1925.
not helpful.
Yeah, why have we been running in and out to deliver updates?
Why didn't
Is
we
he
give him an
alive?
AM radio? He could have had something to listen to and receive messages of support from the public.
Wait, why don't we rig up a tarpaulin so we could lift his torso up so he wouldn't be slowly dying of exposure?
Oh god, why didn't we run a feeding tube? That's also a technology we have in 1925.
All too late. Now what? The one route to get to Floyd is closed forever. That meant two options. Number one, Capitulation. Surrender him to the cave. Or number 2. Dig down from directly above Floyd. Now, the prospect of digging from above seemed almost fanciful. At least, it did in the beginning. But luckily, they had some help. Owing to Miller's reporting, Floyd had become practically the most famous person in the country. The rescue had become a high priority for the governor of Kentucky. Lieutenant General Denhart enters the scene. He's been updated on the situation, and following shortly behind him is a small army of miners and engineers. He declared to the despondent crowd,
They're all the same guy.
"Gentlemen,
They're all the same
I'm
guy.
here on behalf of the governor. The purse strings of Kentucky are open. Take this blank check and bring that man out alive."
There's no more fucking around.
Floyd, in that cold, wet confine, could not have imagined the scale of the operation that was going on 55 feet above him. Authorities assumed control of Colin's rescue. Denhart gave Henry Carmichael the lead to dig, and Carmichael raced to get to work. He enlisted his employees, his fleet of expensive high-tech machinery. Professional groups were brought in from all across the state. Local townspeople were mostly excluded, and for the first time since Collins had been trapped, work was now about to go ahead in a systematic manner. Everyone knew the plan, everyone had something to do, and everyone was working fast. But just as hopes were rising, they were once again dashed against the rocks. They had all of this state-of-the-art machinery shipped in and assembled by the engineers and rearing to go, and it was all worthless. See, the problem is, the cave drew air into it. These diesel-powered engines pumped out enormous volumes of choking exhaust.
So you can
Within
just
a day's operation,
suffocate the poor guy?
The cave would be filled with carbon monoxide, and Floyd would be dead from asphyxiation. Just as quickly as solutions would arise, the cave would parry them away.
I don't think
It
that would be the worst
refused
death either,
to
though.
let this
You just
man
kind of go to
go.
sleep, right?
So engineers and miners had wasted hours assembling everything, only to realize that they had to pack it all up and cart it away.
I'm just thinking, like, how is he
Because
going to
the
get out of
digging
here
of a
alive? I'm thinking of the
55-foot
the
shaft
least
would be done
devastating type
with
of death
picks and
for this poor
shovels.
man.
Carmichael didn't know much about caves, but he knew a lot about quarrying, and he estimated that his team of 75 volunteers could dig and dredge at a rate of 2 feet per hour. If they worked around the clock, they would be digging directly into the spot where Floyd lays within 30 hours. Now, is it possible that Floyd could survive for another 30 hours? Absolutely. Let's go. The first ton was moved, and at first, it was easy work.
But what if
Just
this
dirt
falls
and
down
clay.
on him? That's what I'm
Carmichael
worried about.
understood well that this was a race against time, so he watched the men closely, and if they seemed to be slowing down, even
Are
a
they
little,
digging right on top
they
of
would be
him, or
yanked
like
out,
kind of?
and immediately a new worker subbed in. Nonetheless, the pace slowed. By 10 feet, the shaft narrowed greatly, which meant that only 2 men could work at a time. At 15 feet, they hit boulders. Pickaxes went in, and a system of pulleys and buckets had to be used to cart the rock out. Tracks were even laid to ferry the refuse to a dump site. Time passed. Hours passed. Night went to day. The day was hot. This was yet another problem, because it's early February, there's tons of ice still in the ground, and its exposure to the fresh midday sun meant that the walls of the shaft were softening and the ground becoming sodden. The pace of digging slowed. It was now only half a foot per hour. Most anyone could do was watch helplessly on the sidelines and pray. Interestingly, though, there were a lot of people on the sidelines. Floyd wouldn't have believed that the space above him had turned into a literal carnival in his honor.
Are you in
Vendors
his
showed up
honor?
to
I
sell
can't even
hamburgers,
be
hot
there.
dogs, and
I'm gonna
souvenirs.
die.
Families sprawled out over
Get the
blankets
fuck
to
out of
listen to
here with
hymns
your
from local
shitty ass
church groups.
carnival.
The local mountebank sold
Oh, you're gonna sing
moonshine and
songs that I
miracle
can't
pills.
hear.
There was
Drink.
even a bloody juggler.
There's a
An
juggler
old
I
man
can't
Lee was
even
there,
watch.
walking around, shaking his jar, and
For
soliciting
donations for what?
But where were Homer
For when
and
I'm
Bert
alive?
and Miller?
Maybe?
Okay, let's back up a bit. People did not
It's
properly
ridiculous.
understand exactly how Floyd was trapped,
Yeah.
and the news didn't help much either. So the obvious question started to arise. Why hasn't he been rescued yet? Just clear some gravel or pull a rope. How is this so hard? Motive was attributed.
I heard they didn't even want to have him rescued at all.
I heard that they're doing all of this for publicity.
And Lee's activity of soliciting donations, remember from before, further inflamed rumors.
I bet Floyd isn't even trapped in there.
These were all real
Go
rumors,
check
and they
yourself,
got worse.
asshole.
You know what? I've heard he comes out at night, and then he just goes back in the morning.
Other
Yeah.
rumors included
I heard that after Floyd went into the cave, someone murdered him.
others said
I think they're withholding food and water from him so he dies.
This whole thing is a fraud.
As time went on, it was harder and harder to ignore the
This is
hoax claims.
so
Then,
the United
people started
States to
form
this day and
righteous
age,
mobs,
man.
claiming the whole thing was a fraud, and they started to get nasty. In fact,
It's
two
the
people even
government
went
trying
the
to trick us.
telegraph office and pretended to be Floyd sending telegrams to his mother. Here's what it said. Quote, "Please contradict statements that I am buried alive in Sand Cave. Stop. Tell mother I am all right. Stop. Am coming home. Stop. Floyd Collins." Naturally, the AP published these telegrams unquestioningly, and now word is out to the press that he isn't actually in the cave after all. That made the authorities look foolish, and it could not go on. So, a hasty court-martial was arranged, and Homer, Miller, and Gerald were summoned. They hold one session on Monday and another on Tuesday. Lee and everyone else is cleared of charges, a retraction is written, and things carry on.
Oh, come on, man.
Generators rumbled. Pumps churned out water. Men continued working in shifts and carrying away the earth. Here they are with strips of lumber to shore up the walls. They were only 25 feet down. The pace had slowed to 4 inches per hour. In their desperation, they resorted to dynamite.
Getting sweaty.
But this did little to the boulders.
Save this man.
Despite all these bleak circumstances, people's spirits were high, because everyone was keen for their turn to dig, and because they had one more thing to latch onto. He is probably still alive. Now, how do they know that? Okay, so remember that light bulb around Floyd's neck? Well, it's powered by a simple copper wire. Bare copper wire is subject to very minute fluctuations in resistance. So, an engineer rigs up a
No one's
radio
spoken to this guy how many
amplifier to
hours,
this
though?
wire to read the current and see those small fluctuations. There they were. About 20 per minute. The rate of steady breathing. As his chest expands and contracts, they can read it from this device.
That's cool.
And so, they kept going. And going. And going. 30 hours was the original estimate. Now 144 hours had come and gone, and they were only at 44 feet. Then, rain fell. Rain that mixed with dirt to make mud, much of which then froze to make ice. Ice which expanded and damaged the integrity of the shaft walls. Slowing down with every hour, they continued. Many more hours passed, and they were getting close. But it was now 15 days since Floyd was first stuck in that cave, and people had mostly lost hope. That excitement in the newspapers was tempering down. Visitors began clearing out from Cave City. Many still held on to hope, but their final lifeline, that light bulb, had burnt out. And it wasn't possible to do any more readings on the radio amplifier without it.
Are we gonna give up on him?
If Floyd was still alive. Another 51 hours would pass before Finally, they reached the 60-foot depth.
I'm in. Chisel.
A chisel is handed down at 1:30 p.m. on Monday, February 16th. Sand Cave would open once again. For 17 days, Floyd had been trapped underground, stuck in the same position. 4 days without heat or light. 12 without food or water. But maybe the dripping of the cave water had provided him with some sustenance? There are stories of people surviving harsher extremes.
He did not survive that shit, did he?
Rescuers frantically tugged at rocks to widen the hole. Everybody stood by, absolutely silent, peering into that hole. Ed flashed his light into the gap, then eased himself in. Brenner aimed his light around the room, and then, finally, at Floyd. The first thing he saw was a golden shimmer. It was not the light bulb. It was the reflection of Floyd's tooth. His mouth hung open. He was dead. Brenner was helped out of the cave and he delivered the news.
Dead.
Oh my god.
A coroner would later state
That's
that
so
Floyd succumbed to
fucked.
exposure, and that they had missed him by just 3 days. About the same time
Just 3
that the light bulb
days.
had gone out. But what would they do now with the body? The shaft walls were ready to fall inwards, and risking lives to remove a corpse was seen as just irresponsible. So the following morning, officials made a decision. Floyd would be entombed where he lay. The cave would keep its victim. Now this did not sit well with the family.
Yeah.
But what could they do?
Take him
The
out
next
and
day,
bury
they
him.
planned the funeral. The town emptied of people, and the shaft with Floyd at the bottom was refilled with soil. But that's not quite the end of the story. But
What?
if you hung on for this long, keep holding on, because things are going to continue to get interesting. But first, let me do a wrap-up of where everyone is and all that stuff. Context. The Collins family already had financial hardship. Locals saw Old Man Lee scouring the rescue site for glass bottles. But the owner of the land, B. Doyle, and supposed friend of Floyd, was wholly unsympathetic. He erected a sign on the highway which said, 200 yards away, the body of Floyd Collins is imprisoned in Sand Cave. Then he began charging tourists 50 cents apiece.
Take
for the
him up
opportunity
and bury
to gander into the
him
hole.
so he's not
100
a
years later,
fucking
B's dead. Let's call it.
like
Also, remember those claims of Kentucky being an open
I don't even know the
curse?
word I'm looking
Well,
for.
the state reneged on the deal.
Like a
They refused to pay many of the rescuers, and most of them went home without
he doesn't
any
need to be
compensation.
like a
Some of them
tourist
did make some
attraction.
money out of
There you
the
go.
situation, no?
This
They
poor
lucked
guy
into
died
vaudeville gigs
horrifically.
and roamed the country, giving their first-person account. Miller,
It should be a
however, received an
memorial, if
astonishing
anything.
offer, a $50,000 contract
The
from
fuck
the
are
Chautauqua
you?
lecture circuit.
You look like a
equivalent to the best part
psychopath.
of $1 million in today's
Yeah.
money. He declined. He continued to work at the Louisville Courier-Journal. The following year, his coverage of Floyd's story earned him the Pulitzer Prize. Now the brother, Homer, he needed money and he agreed to do that vaudeville circuit. He stood on stage and regaled the audience about tales of his brother, their childhood, and the tragedy. But Homer made it known why he was up here on stage trying to get money. He had a mission.
I kept thinking of Floyd lying in the muck, where he had suffered beyond our power to imagine. I would never have peace of mind if he remained there.
He wanted the money to dig Floyd up and get him out of that cave. A couple of months later, he had it. Alright, so back to Floyd. April 17th, 1925. 7 miners showed up to the scene. They began to dig. Within a week, they had arrived at Floyd. And this time, they approached from the other side of the rock formation. That way, they could remove the rock pinning Floyd's leg. They lifted him up from his tomb and laid him down on the fresh air above. April 26th, 1925. Floyd was set to rest in the family cemetery. A stalagmite had been set as a headstone to mark out his plot. And there he lay. No, that's not actually where it ends.
What?
This is where it gets
That's
weird.
where it should end.
2 years later, 1927. Times have been tough for the Collins. So Floyd's dad sold Sand Cave to a dentist named Dr. Harry B. Thomas for $10,000. Now, Homer begged him not to, because at the time, the government was starting to buy up tons of land in the area and turn it into national parks. They had to pay at a very competitive rate. But Lee was becoming a bit old and senile by this point, and frankly, it's doubtful that he cared about Homer or Floyd or anyone else for that matter. It's 100 years later, he's dead now, let's call it even. So, the point is, in this land sale with Thomas, Lee agreed to a very odd clause. And that clause said, everything on that property belongs to Thomas. And should he wish, for example, to exhume a dead body and re-embalm it and put it on display in something really tacky like a glass coffin inside a cave, maybe, then that would be his prerogative. Lee signed yes. And Thomas did exactly that. Doyle made
That's
Floyd's
enraging.
Course a tourist attraction.
That's disgusting.
That's right.
How
2 bits
dare
of
you?
gander
How
come and wonder at
fucking
the
dare
incredible
you?
Dead man who died in a cave. But to add insult to injury, it worked. Visitors returned to Sand Cave to gawk morbidly at Floyd. Within a few months, Thomas had turned Lee's failing farm into a successful business. Now, the rest of Collins' family is horrified. They try a number of times to get Floyd returned to
Burn
them,
that
including
shit.
through the legal
No
system.
one's gonna touch my
But
brother's
somehow,
body.
incredibly, the judge ruled
That
in
ass is getting
Thomas's
cremated.
favor. And so, there he lay for the next 2 years.
They even left him there, like in where, like his life ended
cave.
horrifically.
Was not done with Floyd. Until someone hatched a plan. 2 years later, it's midnight, outside Sand Cave. Footsteps can be heard rustling through the brush. Now, we don't know who these 2 men are.
Oh,
but we
he's gonna
know
get stolen,
why they are
100%.
here.
Yeah.
To rob a grave. They sneak inside and clamber over the rocks in the darkness. Reaching Floyd's casket, they undo the latch and throw open the lid. There is his shriveled body. They throw him
His
in a
shriveled
gunny
body.
sack,
Probably.
and they race off into the night. For 800 yards they carry dear Floyd, like a couple of sweaty Santas about to deliver a really terrible Christmas present. Panting, out of breath, knowing that they're going to get caught any minute, they reach the Kentucky Green River hillside. There's no time. With a 1, 2, 3, they launch his body towards the river, and Floyd goes sailing into the air, up,
That's beautiful.
up, into the starlit beyond.
That's the kind of
And
burial he
landing
needs. Yep.
in a bush. Oh,
Oh.
God.
Oh.
The 2 men flee from the scene.
Okay. That could
Now,
have
the next
gone
morning,
much
Thomas
better.
notices that the body of Floyd is somewhat missing, and he
Oh,
contacts the
God.
authorities. The police come, they dust the casket for fingerprints, and bloodhounds are given Floyd's scent and let loose into the hillside.
And they find him hanging
A few
from a
hours
fucking
later,
bush.
they manage to find him. A tangled up mess near the river, but this time with a leg missing. That same one that was trapped under the rock. So, despite his protest, it had been amputated. Neither the leg nor the culprits were ever found. And while it would be nice to think that this was some well-intentioned duo that did this out of the kindness of their hearts to free Floyd, it's
Well,
much more
I
likely
think they
that it was an
tried
act of
to do him
vandalism,
right,
because
even though they
Floyd was
wanted that
simply
leg.
too much of a hot tourist attraction. The following
think that
day,
would have been a
Floyd
better
was
burial,
cast
for
back
sure.
into the cave, back into his box, and it was covered by a metal lid, surrounded by a metal chain.
What's the point now,
and
though?
locked with a padlock. He was now more trapped than he had ever been. This cave had spun fate once again to make sure that its victim would never leave. And so, time passed. Floyd's body would continue to decay. The rot from his body would eventually rot the casket too, and every decade or so, it would need to be
Where are
replaced.
4 caskets?
A few years later, he was no longer on display. But even then, he remained in that box for many more years. In 1961, Floyd's Cave was purchased by Mammoth Cave National Park, and it was closed to the public. There would be no more visitors.
Good.
The entrance itself to Floyd's Cave was closed with a steel gate and bolted, then welded shut. But the Collins family never gave up objecting to Collins' body being left in the cave. And here is where the story ends. In 1989, at the Collins' request, the National Park Service ventured into Floyd's Cave. Continuing on a more than 60-year tradition, a team of people worked over the course of several days to remove him from the cave. They took him out, left the cave, locked it behind them,
He's
and
looked
laid
better.
Floyd to rest at the Mammoth Cave Baptist Church.
Good. Put the
After
poor guy to rest.
64 years in Sand Cave, he is now finally at peace. The end. Thank you to Wendigoon as Floyd.
If you don't
Wendigoon!
hire a gang of hitmen
I knew
to
that
come to your
guy.
house and kill your family.
Samito as Homer.
The BTS meal McDonald's bag that has
I'm
McDonald's
hungry.
and BTS. Shut the fuck up and eat some BTS, bro.
Ordinary Things as Miller.
I'm enthusiastic, but would ultimately duck out the back exit.
Rusty Cage as Gerald.
Oh, well, hello there. Haven't seen y'all in a while. Welcome to my new home.
And many kudos as Burden.
Hey, buddy. You right down there? A little sleepy?
I can, yeah.
We get you a coffee? Little cup of Joe? Little cup of Joseph? A cup of Joseph from a little sleepy guy?
Also, by the way, in case you're confused about the channels, this is how it works now. And do not forget, World of Tanks, World of Tanks.
I won't forget
would
that.
have happened if Floyd had
Okay, I didn't know about the story
World
mode.
of
I'll have to
Tanks.
check that out. Maybe some reactions to that. Absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. You know, it brings Ted the Caver to a whole new light. That this happened and it was even more horrific than Ted the Caver. Like, this is why I'm never gonna do that. I'm not into, you know, enclosed tight spaces, and I think, you know, there's an evolutionary reason for that, for most of us not want to do that, because things like this happen. I don't like heights. I refuse to go up way too high, but there's just way too many things that can go wrong, and it's just an uncomfortable position in and of itself. This was a fascinating story, though. I had no idea. I had never heard this story. Fascinating story of how this guy was just really fucked. You know, we didn't really have the ability at that point to really go in there. And there are actual stories I know from, you know, more recent times where people go into caves and it's impossible to get them out, even with the technology we have. Just don't do it, guys. It's so dangerous. Like, don't do it. Just don't. But anyways, I do thank you for coming to watch this. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope, if you've never heard of Internet Historian or Incognito mode, okay. I'm gonna wait till my mouth shuts the fuck up and decides to play along. Internet Historian, Incognito mode, and the other one he said was story something mode. You'll have to look that one up because I don't remember that one right off the top of my head. I just saw it, but you know how brains work. This is the longest video I've done so far. And I really enjoyed it. I absolutely enjoyed it. I absolutely love this guy. I love watching. Every time he has something coming out, which it takes him a while because he puts a lot of work into this shit, you know. I'll want to watch it, so that's definitely gonna be something happening on this channel a lot. It's Internet Historian, Incognito mode, story mode, I think. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about this and this horrific story, really. I mean, it's fascinating. It's so touch and go. Like, is this guy gonna survive? You know, is he not gonna survive? Like, what the fuck? But then when he doesn't, it's just like, there's more fucking story to it. It's like, let the guy rest, man. Stop it. This is why you have a will and you say, this is what I want to happen after I'm dead. Do not lock me up in a fucking cave, in the cave that ended my life. Please don't. Please put me out in a prairie, you know, buried next to my mommy or something. That's what I'm gonna say. Don't put me underground. Don't put me even next to what ended my life. No. I want to be, like, next to my family, or cremated, or I do something good for the earth, like build me into, like, you know, scatter my ashes on, like, a marijuana plant, smoke that shit up, right? Otherwise, I'll talk to y'all later. I'll see ya later.